This week on the Macgasm podcast, we're talking about traditional iPad news applications, RSS readers, and reading on the iPad versus e-ink readers. I'm Joshua Schnell.
And I'm Brennan Schnell.
So where do you want to kick it off? We can start New York Times, or we can start with the Globe and Mail app.
Let's start with our American viewers for now, I guess. Well, I guess Americans and Canadians can use it all over. Everyone can use the New York Times app.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess maybe first we should say straight off the top is there's kind of two types of news applications on the App Store. Maybe there's 3 or 4 different kinds, but the two big kind of split are dedicated news applications to one source. So New York Times, for Canadians, the Globe and Mail. All the traditional newsprint companies are making applications for their mobile devices. And then in addition to that, the traditional RSS readers for desktops have also moved to the iPad.
Yep.
And there's quite a few of those out there. There's 4 or 5 that really stand above the rest of them, but on the whole, they're kind of split into those two.
So we're going to kind of talk about traditional, where the traditional print market kind of came into and how they're trying to adapt the iPad, and then kind of RSS readers or aggregators, I guess.
Yeah.
So first, let's tell me what you think about the New York Times.
So the New York Times app is phenomenal.
Do you have to pay for that? Do they have because I know on their website
kinda. So this is the problem with the traditional print media moving into the digital age, with RSS versus like a newspaper going digital.
They need to change their frame of mind, right?
Yeah. So what they do is they provide, like for instance, right now I'm on the front page of the New York Times app, and the first story is opposition in Egypt gears up for major Friday protests, and I click. And in this case, I get a pretty lengthy article, and you scroll left to right for the article, and you'll get a full article. But sometimes that's not the case. So if I can go back,
do they limit it? Do you know if to a certain amount of articles, like you can read 5 articles
based on
and then
sections.
It kicks you out,
certain sections you have to be registered, which means you have to pay a fee to get. So photos, opinion, world, U.S. news, politics, the New York region, technology, science, health, sports, arts, movies, theater, fashion and style, T magazine.
So everything they cover, pretty much.
Those are all paid. You have to pay to get. So what they give you for free in the application is top news, things that are the most emailed, which is kind of what's most talked about. What's going on in the world a little bit. Videos, business, and that's about it.
The layout and how the application actually functions, what do you think about it?
It's very easy to read. It's very obvious, subheadings and stuff. Like the UI is good. It's just I've yet to feel like I've got myself a news app where I'm reading a newspaper, like that feeling you get.
The Globe and Mail app, I was sick of not really having something to read in the morning, right? Totally. Growing up, you always have your parents that had subscriptions to newspapers or whatnot. So you go downstairs while you're eating breakfast or whatever, you would open the newspaper and just see some news, just something to do while you're eating breakfast. Yep. So then I came across the Globe and Mail app, and this app, the way it functions, the way the articles load, like you get a gallery here, you can scroll between the top stories at the top or the featured articles. You can scroll down.
See, this is almost more of a website-based layout. It's optimized obviously for the iPad, but you can see the differences between the concepts they had. The New York Times really aimed for taking a newspaper and making it digital. Everything about their app screams that. This is more about taking the newspaper into a digital age with digital mechanics. Yeah,
they weren't just trying to grab what they already had and finding a quick way to convert it into an app.
Right.
They realized that they had content. They took their content and figured out a nice layout that they could set up for its ease of reading, right? So let's just go back here. So you got all your typical world, business, national, sports, technology, politics, life, arts, all the similar topics you'd get in a newspaper. So when I wake up in the morning, I launch this, and I'm, I'll have time to read about the Alberta Minister of Finance or whatever. Cool. And I just scrolled. The ads aren't as intrusive, I would say, as the New York Times ads.
Is it an ad-to-ad thing? Like, is it depending on the advertiser what the ad does?
My guess is the app. So they're injecting ads. Globe and Mail's injecting ads into their app, kind of like what New York Times is doing. But they're doing like a little 300 by 250 pixel box in their articles. And at the bottom of the app, when you first launch it, there's a little car ad.
So the bottom advertisement is the same. There is one of those on the New York Times app. But I don't mind the immersive advertising.
So speaking of news apps, we kind of want to talk about RSS apps and how the iPad has kind of brought that all together, and specifically with Flipboard. But before we start talking about Flipboard, I just want your opinion quickly, I guess, on your opinion of RSS. I personally think that it's going to start slowing down and dying. Ooh. But the reason why I say that is if you think about Twitter and you think about who you follow on Twitter, your news sources, right? They're throwing their articles on that, and all you have to do is really launch Twitter to get that. So Twitter kind of replaces your RSS.
So I don't think RSS is ever going to die. I think what it does very well. There's a lot of other technologies outside of delivering news that RSS does, right? Podcasts, delivering content, video, audio. So I don't see RSS dying anytime soon, but the way we're getting news is changing very quickly. It used to be newspapers, and then it kind of transitioned into this whole blog RSS model to deliver your news. And now it's Twitter. You can't keep up with that. Yeah. As someone who writes a news-based website on a daily basis, Twitter gets the news a lot faster than I'll get the news in my RSS thing. So the way I kind of monitor Twitter is keywords, finding that kind of information, and 9 times out of 10, like I said, it's coming up in Twitter before it's coming up in my RSS. Yeah, totally. So you're right, and that's gonna segue a little bit into Flipboard, because Flipboard
they do something really well.
Yeah, it's a hybrid
really
model.
Well.
It's not. It wasn't an RSS reader to begin with. So Flipboard scrapes your Twitter page for links and builds kind of a digital magazine based on what your friends are linking to around the internet.
And it doesn't have to be just Twitter, right? You can connect your Facebook up in there too, which is nice because you log in and you kind of see a newsy way of your Twitter feed. You're scrolling through the pages and you're like, you know what? This is kind of cool. Someone posts a link, you see the picture of the link they post, right? Instead of having to click on the link. It takes the content from your Twitter feed and puts it into a nice kind of newspaper feel.
So I had a love-hate relationship with Flipboard off the top. They had a lot of launch problems, which we're not going to get into because that's kind of the past. But one of the number one features that everyone requested, and might be a commentary into what you're saying, is RSS support. It did not have Google Reader support, which is a primary RSS kind of aggregating service. Everyone was asking for it. They finally built it into the app, and for me, I'm using Flipboard more since they've done that.
Like I said, it's cool because someone posts a link, you get the first paragraph or two of that article, so you can start reading it and you can be like, you know, instead of having to click on the link, I don't like that, and you just flip to the next.
Yeah. The other really cool thing it does is it's very much built around social networks, so you can subscribe to things like Twitter lists. So I have a Twitter list set up for all the Macgasm contributors. So if I'm curious to find out what they're sharing on a daily basis, I can subscribe to that list, and then I'll get a customized section in Flipboard just from those people, which is great for tracking things like, developers or companies. So all these applications we've talked about have been iPad based, and reading on the iPad in most situations is fine. Indoors, dark, in an office, normal, fluorescent light, not outside, right?
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
So that's where the line draws, and that's where reading on an iPad ends. You step outside, it's over. It's over. I have a Kobo eReader here, and they're Canadian based, so we're supporting them a little bit, and this thing is phenomenal. When I picked this up for the first time, I did not think it would be sufficient for reading. I had the iPad and it was going well. I would read on it and I didn't see a need for this device.
Because you spend most of your time
The first thing I thought about it is exactly what you said. Oh my God, every time I push the next button, the screen goes black and reloads the screen. But
after a while, you forgot about it.
When you're looking for that and you're like, oh, what do I hate about this or what do I love about this? You're gonna notice those little things. By the time I got to the beach and I was reading, pushing the next page button was probably less time than a traditional page swipe. I didn't notice it anymore. It was gone. It wasn't a big deal. The first few times I tried it, I was like, this is gonna drive me nuts. It's like black, it's black, it's black, it's black, it's black, it's black. But then when you're actually reading and you hit the next button, by the time you hit the next button and you get back to the top of the page, you're back.
I think that if we could somehow create an iPad and an e-reader together, I think that's the perfect.
Yeah, if the iPad could have like dual mode, where you hit a button and also it's e-reader.
Because the iPad does what it does very well. The color, the touch screen.
Don't get me wrong. Utility, hands down, bang for buck, I would go with the iPad every single time. If you want to read substantially on a mobile device that's going to last you 30 hours, you know, standby time, all it does is one thing.
You're not afraid to throw it on the fan.
Not afraid. Well,
that's how Justin treats all of his gear. Forget it.
They're cheaper. I think this is like, you know, $130.
Yeah.
Comes with a bunch of books already. If that's what you're going for, you're going to want an e-reader. I can't recommend getting an iPad over an e-reader, but if you're wanting an iOS device and you want the apps and the games, and you read occasionally and you're not going to really take it on vacation or anything, then, you know, go for an iPad. But that's kind of even getting blurred a little bit because companies like Kobo, Kindle, Barnes & Noble are bringing apps to the iPad.
That's the thing, right?
You still have the same problems, right? It's still backlit in
but
your
now
face.
you have more things
You can take the books
Yeah.
back and forth to your devices, which was huge.
That's
so if I buy a book on the Kobo through, you know, proprietary store, I can take it to the iPad and still read those books there.
If they can figure out a way to get this into that, or that into this, so if a device comes out like this, it's this size.
It's got to be some kind of hybrid screen, right? You can't do e-ink.
That's right.
Currently, and they don't have that technology yet.
You push a button, the whole screen flips. I don't know, right?
But if it was just like an overlay, and when you push the button, the display is off and it's backlit, you know, we're talking way outside the box. I don't know if that's what they're working towards, and I think that would be the future of these tablet-based devices. Don't get me wrong. I read a whole book on the Kobo, and I read a whole book on my iPad, and it was a more enjoyable experience for me reading with an e-reader than it was on my iPad.
Totally.
So that's it for this episode of Macgasm. If you want to get in touch with us, you can catch us on Twitter, twitter.com/Macgasm. We have a Facebook page, which is in our sidebar on the website, macgasm.net. So for Macgasm, I'm Joshua Schnell.
And I'm Brennan Schnell.
Have a good one.
Adios.
Muchachos. No so funny.
Beaches.
Beaches.
Cool. That's going to be a boring episode. Hopefully Luca works his magic.
It's not going to be boring. It's just sometimes it's going to be funny and sometimes...
We don't drink when we record these?
I know, they're not funny.